Dawn slides like a blade across the tower stones. You taste iron in the air before you see the block. Silk whispers at your wrists. A rosary knot presses the pulse in your palm. Outside, the ravens keep their gossip. Inside, a parchment waits folded twice, red wax cooling. Someone wrote a list in the night. Not prayers. Names. You are Anne, queen uncrowned by rumor before the sword can do its work. The chapel still smells of incense and wet limestone. A single candle gutters as if reluctant to witness. Footsteps approach, polite as courtiers. A key turns. The lieutenant bows. Behind him, a clerk carries the paper that will decide the order of your mourning. Who stands close? Who is barred? Which words are permitted to reach the sky? You think of the other lists that brought you here. Banquets inked in gold, interrogations inked in fear. An inventory of smiles kept by men who never smiled back. Thomas Cromwell's hand is neat, a net that never looks like a net. Was it he who wrote this final sheet? Or was it a priest late with mercy, a captain with clean boots, a friend pretending not to be afraid? A list has many authors when a court wants only one result. Breathe. Silk. Iron. Paper. The city beyond the walls yawns. Awake, unaware of the arithmetic being done upon your life. The swordsman from Calais sharpens nothing. His skill is a quiet promise. The clerk lifts his quill. Somewhere a seal cracks like distant thunder. Someone shows which breaths you are allowed today, and which are already history. Tonight, you will know why. The tower pretends to be a fortress, but this morning, it is an accountant. It counts your breaths. It tallies your footsteps from cell to chapel and back, a ledger that pretends to be stone. London's dawn crawls over the Thames like pewter poured too slowly, and the air carries that old taste iron, river, endings. You sit very straight because that is what queens do when the room is smaller than their name. The rosary warms under your fingers. Silk at your cuffs makes it small, treacherous music. Fact refuses to wait its turn. The date is the 19th of May 1536. You are to die by the sword, an unusual clemency arranged at the king's pleasure. A French executioner has been summoned from Calais, famed for swiftness. You mark each item like beads. Date, instrument, distance. The lieutenant of the tower bows as if bowing could soften calendars. He asks which ladies shall attend. Notes your answer with a quill that never trembles. Fear here is administrative. It arrives on parchment, folded twice. The city is already awake enough to gossip. From the green you hear a murmur, the sound of curiosity dressing as piety. Behind that murmur walks the rumor you have carried like a second shadow. They say Thomas Cromwell sharpened this morning with paper, that his lists move faster than prayers. They say your brother, 5 men, a web spun from glances and music and envy. They say the king's heart changed when a son did not arrive and never changed back. Rumor is an eager usher. It seats each guest where the story wants them. You breathe and let memory turn the pages backward without tearing them. Whitehall's halls. A hand at your elbow that became a crown. A kiss that became a policy. You remember the first time incense in a chapel smelled like decision, not devotion. You remember laughter that sounded like a key turning. Once, the king's gaze made you feel discovered. Later, it made you feel counted. Between those two feelings, a nation cracked its church to fit his longing. The crack runs through your ribs even now. They bring you a small basin. You wash your hands because hands can still be obedient when nothing else can. Your lady's eyes shine the way candles do when a door opens. You ask gently about Elizabeth, your daughter, your unarguable miracle. A nod, a reassurance. She is safe, she is well. The words settle like warm milk in a stomach that cannot keep it. You let them. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. A clerk appears with the folded paper from the hook. The final list, who may approach. the precise hour, the order of silence. The wax bears a thumbprint you think you recognize. Cromwell's? The king's? God's? You smile at the absurdity of the thought, and at once you do not. Your world has been curated into lines and margins, into allowed and forbiddens, into within the rail, and beyond the scaffold. Even your last words will be measured, weighed for treason and comfort both. You rise and the silk at your hem answers like a tide. Outside, the ravens hop as if consulted. The swordsman practices courtesy. No blade, no show, only the promise of swiftness. You nod to him because both of you have been hired by the same will. The chapel waits school stone, faint incense, a hush that pretends to be mercy. You step forward 1 foot, then the other, and the tower counts, dutiful as ever. Somewhere, a list ends with your name and a little line after it, as if the writer could not help drawing the horizon. Before you were a crown, you were a question sharpened by corridors. He was still married in 1526 to 1527 when his gaze first learned your outline, Henry VIII, husband to Catherine of Aragon, king of a realm that hummed with choirs and lawsuits. You learned to walk past altars like a flame pretending to be a candle. A court is a school where every lesson is about weather, how to sense a storm in a man before the clouds find him. Your smile became a barometer. Your silence, a kind of map. The wound did not begin at the scaffold. It began in rooms perfumed with incense where policy wore velvet. Thomas Wolsey fell, and you discovered how quickly distance can be measured in inches of iron keys that no longer fit doors you once opened. When Wolsey was gone, Thomas Cromwell arrived with paper and patience, and the Reformation slid its blade between England and Rome. You became not merely beloved, you became useful. Useful is a verb in palaces. Someone uses you to move the world an inch. Fact stays where it always stands. 1533, you wed the king. 1533, Elizabeth is born at Greenwich. 1534, the Act of Supremacy makes the king head of the Church of England. These are stones laid in daylight. You felt them at night, pressing through the mattress like truths that would not soften. A sun did not come. The kingdom waited with its hands folded, patient as a courtroom. Rumor never folds its hands. It keeps touching what it names. It said you learned your confidence in the French Queen's halls and brought it home as if wit were contraband. It said you practiced charm like an instrument and played it too close to Sir Henry Norris or Mark Smeaton. That music grew teeth when it left the lute. It said you laughed in the wrong room, and someone heard prophecy in it of queens who do not last. It said the king's leg wept and his heart hardened. That Jane Seymour's quiet shadow lengthened on stucco long before anyone admitted there was a shadow at all. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. The wound is simpler than they tell it. You believe love could be policy's physician. You believed if you kept the silk bright and the mind brighter, you could stitch the kingdom shut where it had been cut. But love that overturns altars becomes a ledger the morning after. You learned how accounts are kept. Who spoke, who stayed, who looked, who lowered eyes. You learned the arithmetic of glances. One too many equals treason. There were days the river looked like mercy. Barges moved as if they understood how to carry secrets without spilling. You watched Catherine of Aragon exiled to Kimbolton, and the world told you that crowns are detachable. You watched Moore lose his head for a sentence spoken too clearly and understood that clarity is a blade that cuts both ways. The court taught your heartbeat to take dictation. You pressed your ear to the door of God and heard only iron hinges, locks, a kingdom closing itself into a shape that would fit its fear. You sharpened your prayers until they could pass for counsel. You wore your French hood like an argument. You practiced tenderness as statcraft-like fingers on a brow, soft words over a map. At night you counted saints and signatures and could not remember which saved more lives. The wound that formed you was not sin. It was exposure. A woman made visible enough to rearrange a nation becomes too visible to survive its regret. And the men who regret most eloquently are the ones whose pens never shake. Era and place. Era. Tudor England, 1536. Locations: Tower of London, King's House, Tower Green, St. Peter at Vincula, Whitehall. Flashbacks. Global style oil painting realism. Late Renaissance Tudor palette. Candle overcast light, shallow doff, soft rim light, subtle grain. Muted ivory, wine, emerald, aged gold, ebony. Cinematic 1.85:1. PG-13. No text negative. Modern clothing, CGI, plastic skin, deformed hands, extra fingers, logos, watermarks, baked-in text, open gore, low race, oversaturated. Cartoon consistency anchors. Anchor _ face _ Anne. Late 20s, early 30s. Oval face, dark eyes, natural pale skin. French hoop black with pearls. Dark emerald, black gown, square neckline plus pearl necklace. Anchor _ face _ Henry. Early 40s, broad face, reddish beard, Tudor bonnet with jewel. Crimson gold doublet, ermine mantle. Anchor _ face _ Cromwell. 40s, 50s. Shrewd eyes, black cap, dark wool gown. Quill ledgers. Anchor _ face _ Lieutenant, Kingston. 40s, 50s. Solemn. Half armor, cloak, anchor _ swordsman. French plain dark doublet, no gore shown. Anchor _ scribes. Guards. Tudor livery, red, black, halberds. Scribes with quills, inkpots, objects, motifs, red wax seal, iron key ring, parchment ledger, hourglass, rosary, ribbon, dark cherry. Candle clusters, raven, comb with bent tooth. Camera 16:9 cinematic. 50 to 85 millimeters portrait feel. Gentle vignette. Close-ups preferred. A court teaches you that distance is devotion measured correctly. You keep it like a jewel 2 paces from laughter, 4 from flattery, an arm's length from any man who is not a priest or a king. Then the door miscalculates. Someone stays when the others bow. A hand lingers to lift a fallen glove. A voice says, Majesty, without hunger, only human temperature, and your defenses. Trained to repel siege engines, do not recognize a hearth. Fact insists on its chair near the fire. Sir Henry Norris, Sir Francis Weston, William Brereton, Mark Smeaton, George Boleyn. Lord Rochford names inked into indictments, carved into the morning ahead. Late April to early May 1536, interrogations begin. The 2nd of May, you are arrested. By the 15th of May, you and your brother are tried at the King's Hall within the Tower. These dates beat like a second pulse under your own. But a bond is not a calendar entry. It's a sequence of ordinary moments that learn each other by heart. Norris attends you in the privy chamber, too attentive for comfort, and yet exactly as attentive as habit requires. Weston laughs too quickly, as boys do when the room is full of sharpened men. Brereton is weather perennially present, hard to quote. Smeaton the musician plays what others cannot speak. Your brother, clever and glittering, is the mirror the court holds up to you and then punishes you for recognizing. Rumor prefers its music slow. It says a Mayday tilt changed the temperature of the king's gaze. It says you dropped a ribbon and 3 men bent for it at once. It says Smeaton confessed under pressure to songs he never sang, and that what the court called confession was only the echo of fear trying to stop its own mouth. It says Norris loved you from a distance that ruined his steps. It says your brother was dragged into the script because tragedy requires an act no one believes and everyone repeats. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. You remember nothing. Seditious-only sentences that ought to have passed like harmless weather. Will His Grace ride today? The king's leg troubles him. The music comforts me. You remember an April garden and the way hawthorn lies with the truth-sweet thorn, impossible to hold without proof of having held it. You remember politics tasting like sugar because you were winning, and then like ashes because you were not. Cromwell's paper sees what eyes cannot prove. It watches you rearrange flowers and writes purpose. It hears you prefer a French fashion and writes pride. It notes who stood too near your sleeve and writes carnal. Man who never touched you use ink as if it were flesh. The bond that mattered most, of course, was the one the realm wanted, a son to well-desire to dynasty, and the absence of that bond made every thread suspect. You consider too late the arithmetic you forgot to do. How many glances does it take to equal treason if envy is the accountant? How many evenings of music before a lute becomes a witness? Somewhere beyond these stones, the king's counselors stack your ordinary hours into a scaffold of syllables. The door that miscalculated now stands open behind you, and the corridor beyond it is a straight line that ends at morning. Power does not thunder in palaces. It tidies. The first thing they straighten is your language. A gentleman usher asks whether her grace might rest after dinner, and rest becomes a room with fewer keys on your side of the door. A clerk confirms your jewel list, and confirmation becomes subtraction. Silk still moves when you breathe, but the air around it learns to behave like iron. Fact is punctual. The 2nd of May, 1536, you are arrested and brought to the Tower. 15. May you stand trial in the King's Hall, peers arrayed like carved saints who forgot their pity. The 17th of May, 4 men, Norris, Weston, Burayt, and Smeaton, are executed on Tower Hill. The French swordsman from Calais is summoned for you. Between those stones of time, a quieter masonry sets. They stage order. Inventories are read in voices trained for mass. Item: a prayer book with black velvet cover. Item: a brooch of gold and pearls. Your ladies are rotated, like chess pieces until only the cold ones remain. In the chapel, the candles are trimmed lower, as if like were an argument they intend to win. A sergeant-at-arms places a stool exactly where you should sit, so that the window makes a halo of you, while the record makes something else. Rumor is the stage whisper that carries to every seat. It says Cromwell rehearsed the jurors before they put on their robes. It says lists were drafted days in advance, and fitted around you like a bodice. It says a lute player's terror became the kingdom's favorite aria. It says a queen's brother was needed because tragedy demands kinblood to read his fate. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. The choreography of quiet threats is precise. They give you choices with only one ending. They give you choices with only one ending. Confess your lightness, they suggest, and mercy will dress the noose as ribbon. Maintain your innocence, and innocence will be weighed against the king's loneliness, then found wanting. A counselor calls you daughter, a tenderness sharpened to a hook. Another calls you madame, which is colder than iron. Together they patrol the distance between your voice and the paper already waiting to receive it. In court, they do not shout. They arrange. Lord Chancellor Audley keeps his tone smooth. The Duke of Norfolk presides because fate enjoys its little ironies. A roster of lords, some who once envied your laugh, some who once chased it, listen as if listening could be neutral. A gentleman reads a poem as evidence. Another reads a look. The law prefers nouns to verbs when it wishes to manufacture gravity, adultery, treason, incest, words heavy enough to hold down a morning. You find that courage is a verb with small hands. It straightens the edge of your sleeve. It carries your gaze across a room built to shatter it. You answer with clarity because fog has already chosen its friends. You notice the dust in the shaft of light, each speck a tiny planet turning, and for a moment the world is only that, quiet matter moving in appointed circles. Then the clerk coughs and writes again. At night the tower grows instructional. Stone behaves like a master that never raises its voice. The river breathes beside you, patient as bookkeeping. Someone far below oils a hinge, and the scent climbs the staring sense of the practical. You think of Elizabeth, a cradle without a crown, and you ask the dark for a mercy that does not spend anybody else's life. The dark refuses to answer. It has learned from men how not to commit itself. Morning comes differently once lists begin to govern it. Trays arrive too early. Footsteps stop too near. The lieutenant's bow bends lower and means less. You sleep lightly, as if dreams were another interrogation. When you wake, silk remembers your shape, iron remembers your schedule, and paper, already folded, remembers everything on your behalf. Night leans against the tower like a listener. The chapel smells of spent incense and damp stone. Your cell of tallow and the cold sweetness of the Thames. A woman grows smaller by candlelight. A queen learns how to fold herself into prayer. You straighten the silk at your cuff, because order is the last realm still yours. Somewhere below, iron hinges speak in their old grammar open. Close. Decide. Fact taps once, twice, thrice. The 17th of May, 1536. 4 men, Norris, Weston, Brereton, Smeaton die on Tower Hill. The same day, your brother George Boleyn is beheaded. Also that day, Archbishop Cranmer declares your marriage invalid, unthreading the past even as the future sharpens. The 19th of May is written for you, a French swordsman from Calais, renowned for speed. The calendar is a blade. It moves without malice. Rumor arrives wearing other people's breath. It says the king rode to Jane Seymour that afternoon with a hawk and a new patience. It says he watched tennis while the city counted heads. It says you laughed only once at supper, saying the executioner was skilled and your neck was little. It says Cromwell's men rehearsed the scaffold like a stage set, and someone's list arranged the morning by inches. Where your ladies stand, how many steps to the block, which words are permitted to live. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. You test the silence the way sailors test rope. It holds. You imagine the roads you will not take, the hall at Whitehall where your laughter used to turn windows into light, the nursery where Elizabeth will learn to read the world that refused your handwriting. You whisper her name and feel how names can be boats, even in rooms without doors. Footsteps. The lieutenant with his honorable face. Behind him, a clerk who holds his quill like a narrow mercy. They inform you the hour has changed, the 18th postponed to the 19th for arrangements. You nod as if one can nod at weather. In the pause that follows, your life, obedient to ritual, lays out its small things. A comb with 3 bent teeth, a ring worn from your hand, a handkerchief with a wine-colored thread. You realize the empire you ruled has shrunk to what fits on a table. You kneel with the chaplain. The prayer you choose is not for rescue, it is for proportion. Let the ending match the person, not the rumor. Let the breath be steady. Let the sword be clean. The floor is cold enough to argue. You lend it your heat. Between 2 psalms, a thought arrives, plain as iron. My ending was already signed. You are not punished for what you did. You are concluded because a kingdom needed conclusion. Paper wanted a period. You were excellent handwriting. Past midnight, the river grows louder, tide turning, barges nudging their chains. A raven scrapes the parapet. The moon coins the yard with small, bright lies. You sleep in stitches, waking to the arithmetic of the dark. 1 candle, 2 shadows, 3 heartbeats you can hear. When dawn finally stains the stones, it does not feel like rescue, only like confirmation. The door opens softly. Your ladies weep the way professionals do, quiet with skill. You rise. You fix the hood. You tuck your hair because you are considerate, even now, of other people's work. They bring the list, the last one, and read it with the pity of librarians. You nod when it tells you where to stand, how to face. when to speak. You will do as instructed, but not because they command it, because you intend to own the shape of the last thing with your name on it. The morning performs itself with dreadful grace. You climb the scaffold. You kneel upon the straw. You tuck your hair beneath the hood so the blade will love its work. The Frenchman calls for his sword where it is not, and while your eyes turn mercy, silk relaxes, iron sings. The square exhales like a beast that has tasted bread. Your ladies cradle what the kingdom cannot keep and carry you toward the chapel of St. Peter at Vincula, where queens become measurements, ell of linen, inch of oak, a ledger line that means done. Fact is unblinking. The 19th of May 1536, you die by the sword within the tower. The same day, the city resumes its errands. Your body is laid in the chapel royal of the tower. Elizabeth is styled lady rather than princess. Within days, the king is betrothed to Jane Seymour. Within weeks, the court rearranges itself as if furniture were a conscience. The final inventories begin, coffers opened, jewels reassigned, liveries recolored to match the new sun rising in the king's eye. Rumor refuses to be buried. It says your lips moved after the blade. It says the ravens would not leave the green. It says the swordsman wept. It says Cromwell toasted efficiency and later paid his own bill in 1540 beneath the same indifferent sky. It says a note exists, folded once, then once again, in a hand that learned clarity from you. Some historians insist this part was exaggerated to ruin a reputation, but the private letters from that winter suggest something else. Erasure is a craft. The Boleyn falcon is lifted from hangings, badges scraped from cornices. Your motto filed under another woman's smile. A portrait panel is repurposed. Oak remembers the old face beneath the new paint and keeps its secret grain. Accounts are balanced to the penny. Item: black velvet prayer book to the jewel house. Item: pearl bee to the crown. Item: one cradle reassigned. The tower clerk binds the year's papers with ribbon the color of dark cherries, the same shade your ladies once used for your hair ties. Paper keeps mercy where people misplace it. In the kitchens, a boy remembers the drop of wine on your cuff the week the king laughed. At Greenwich, a nurse remembers a child's hand closing on her finger with a queen's certainty. The realm forgets loudly and remembers softly. Stone forgets, but dust does not. By 1558, that child becomes queen, Elizabeth I, and the wind that moves her banners sounds like silk forgiving iron without letting it forget. London retells you according to its need, temptress, martyr, warning, mother of a golden age. The law prefers nouns. The people prefer stories. The truth prefers breath. Your last words travel farther than any verdict. The modest prayer, the careful blessing for the king who could not bless you twice. In quiet rooms at Hampton Court, the floorboards still keep a patient rhythm, as if counting steps that ended before the corridor did. Some nights a scholar in a cold archive finds a thumb smudge where a seal once was and feels watched by handwriting. Some mornings, a visitor at the tower pauses at the chapel screen and cannot say why the candle he lights seems to warm two names at once. History edits itself. The edits leave fingerprints. They will say you were a lesson. You were also a beginning. The crown that cut you down minted the mind that would not kneel. The door that closed on you opened on your daughter. The lists that ended your mourning failed to end your echo. Paper, in the end, could not keep you still. Even now, there is a sealed letter they refuse to release.